I'm going to jump in because, for the sake of time, I know there was other questions. I'm sorry. Here's what I want to draw from these two chapters. And if I could have done this over 2 weeks, I think I would have still tried to get at the heart of these things. What I consider to be revelations about God himself from the telling of the story, from the origins. One is that God is the one who is. We have to talk about existence itself, and we have to talk about what I'll explain to you in a minute is called metaphysics. God is the one who is. Second, God speaks. God is not silent. We learn that the God who creates the world, the maker, is actually likes to talk, likes to speak, likes to say things that we can hear. Third, God owns. All things he makes are his. They're his property. Fourth, God intends. There is intentionality, purpose, and destiny in everything that God creates, including your life. And finally, God gives. I believe that even the story of creation is about the making of a perfect gift just for us. So let's start at the beginning. What's the first thing we ask someone when we want to get to know them? I mean, aside from what is your name, and that's just more about can I interact with you. First I'll ask your name, but if you really want to get to know a person, what's the first question you ask them? Typically, where are you from? We want to know where a person's from. Part of the reason why is because I think origins matter. You tell me where you're from, and I'll be closer to understanding who you are, closer to knowing you. You tell me you grew up on a farm, or you tell me you grew up in a big city, or you tell me you grew up in France, you tell me you grew up in Africa, and I've taken a huge jump from knowing nothing about you to knowing quite a bit about you. Where and how we begin matters. Of course, this, guys, is the story of the world's beginning, of humanity's beginning, the universe even, all things, all processes, physics itself. But because it's the story of the beginning of everything, it's even more than that. It's the story, listen, because it's talking about that first moment when the world was created, when the universe began, it also, by implication, is talking about the 1 second before that. And that is an infinite concept, the 1 second before time itself existed. The 1 second before anything existed. Before there was a sun or a moon, before there was galaxies or atoms, before there was math or science, or even the nature that they study, before there was anything. What happened? What was going on 1 second before that? What was there? What simply is and was? This is what we call metaphysics, the study of metaphysics. Meta just means before, and physics is the processes, the observable processes of the universe, of the world that we see and know, can experience with our senses or through observation. It's the highest place the mind can go. And for a minute, I need you to sort of be intellectuals with me for a minute. It's not just what happened in the beginning, but what happened before the beginning. Who was there? Who is always there? And this, therefore, is a story about God, the one who is, the one who always is, who exists even before anything else exists. The ultimate question of metaphysics is what Aristotle called the first mover. If you see that things are moved, cause and effect, something moves upon a thing which causes it to move, and you can go backwards sequentially to say, what is the first mover? And there has to be something that is unmoved. This is Aristotle's concept of the unmoved mover. Aquinas then takes that and says it's the uncaused cause. Something causes this thing which causes this thing, but there has to be something which begins the whole domino effect. The uncaused cause. And therefore, it is not like anything else in the sequence. It's not like us. It's not bound by the limitations of time and space. And yet that thing, that uncaused cause, that unmoved mover, is personal. It has a mind. It thinks because it creates us. It creates something intricate and sophisticated and beautiful and strange as we are. Creates termites and flower petals and positrons. Creates laughter and chemistry. The kind that happens between elements when they react, and the kind that happens between Adam when he first looks at Eve. And when the text says in the beginning, it also means before the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. But what was he doing before that? Before he creates, what is he doing? And what we actually have is this image of the Spirit of God hovering above the waters. Now, the only thing I know in nature that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, that hovers is like a hummingbird. Have you ever seen a hummingbird? Have you ever seen a time-lapse photo of a hummingbird? And it actually looks quite light and simple, but the truth is, that is the exertion. Well, if anybody knows anything about aerodynamics, it takes so much power to hover. It's an extraordinary exertion of energy to hover over something. I mean, planes can go out and they can move, but to sort of hover above a thing takes extra energy, more energy. And this is the image of this sort of powerful God hovering, brooding over the nothing, waiting to sort of give that energy to something else. And waiting to do what? This is a question that Genesis 1 answers. He's waiting to speak, to say something. God is the one who is in the first place, but he's also the one who then speaks. God speaks, and when he speaks, his speech creates. Just by virtue of its sound, the universe is awakened and created. And the first thing created by word is light. There's a groundbreaking book a number of decades ago written by an elementary particle physicist, a Nobel Prize winning physicist by the name of Steven Weinberg, and he wrote a book called The First 3 Minutes. And in that book, he tried to understand really what is now we understand as the common sort of Big Bang theory, the idea that the universe is expanding. So much of science, even quantum physics, is dealing with the question of the expanding universe. And it's not really a question. In other words, you can measure that the universe is expanding out from itself. It's moving. It's moving outwards. It's sort of like if you took a hand grenade and you pulled the pin on the hand grenade and you dropped it, those pieces in an explosion would then move out from each other. And let's just say over the course of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, whatever, those pieces of that hand grenade continued to move out from each other. And then what you could do is you could actually measure the time that it takes this piece in whatever measurable distance you choose, this piece to go from here to here, and then you can reverse engineer that and say, okay, then that, you go back to actually you can, in Stephen Hawking's words, you can figure out that there's a brief history of time, there's a beginning to time, and we can actually plot, you can actually calculate the history of time itself. You can move the hand grenade pieces back to when it was whole and one thing, beginning of the universe. And Weinberg actually, what he does is because he's an elementary particle physicist, he wants to break down the universe to its smallest unit, and he has a particular understanding of temperature, the question of temperature. And then actually what happens is as the universe expands out from itself, it is cooling. It's cooling down, temperature-wise. And as we reverse backwards, calculate backwards, this is actually pretty easy physics to understand. This might be stretching you, but me too as well. This isn't our thing, obviously. But as the universe gets closer in time, as we reverse time, it's hotter. And actually the temperature increases. And so as you play back history, as the galaxies move and expand apart, they get colder. As they come closer together, they get hotter. And so if we go back in time enough, the temperature continues to rise to, say, 1 million degrees. And at 1 million degrees, we know compounds begin to break down. And then maybe 2 million degrees, atoms begin to break down. Maybe 5 million degrees, subatomic particles begin to break apart. At 10 billion degrees, they break down into super subatomic particles. And the smallest subatomic particle, the smallest particle known, is called the photon. And a photon, if you don't know, is not something in Star Trek that they shoot out of their cannon. But a photon is a measurement of light. It is the smallest understood particle in the known universe. Light. In other words, the whole universe was at one time an immeasurably dense ball of photons, a powerful light that then explodes upon the nothing creating the universe. A ball of light that began to expand and became what is the universe. Now I ask you this question. Who knew all these thousands of years ago that the universe started with photons? How could they have known this? This massive, dense, hot moment of extreme energy being released in a ball of light. And guys, don't get upset with me. This is what happens when God speaks. The creation event was a Big Bang. It was. Because when the voice of God speaks into the echo of the nothing, that light should exist, it detonates the nothing, and existence is born. Have you ever been in a ravine, a big cave, or a cavern and said something? I mean, it's kind of like this room right here. And it's, hello! Have you ever done that? Heard your own voice, the power of your own voice echo into the nothing of that? Have you ever done that? Can you imagine? I just want you to imagine for a second. If that's what it sounds like when you speak into the nothing of a cave or a ravine, think of the trauma of the voice of God speaking into the uncreated nothing of the universe. It is an explosive moment. This is the cosmic authority of the voice of God. The author gets to say, an author of a piece of literature or the author of a painting gets to say what the piece means, or what the painting means, or what the story means, or what the poem means, and whatever he says it is what it is, because he's the one who wrote it. He's the one who spoke it. And this is the very meaning of authority, authorship. And he is the author of all things, including your life story. He has authority. He is the creator of your person. He's the only one who can say whether you and your life are good or bad. And he created you, and he speaks to you, and he speaks over you. And still he speaks today, right now. He is not silent. Creation itself is the testament that he is not silent. He is not a silent God. But his speech is not like ours. You see, we say things we don't mean, don't we? He doesn't. We say things that we will do that we never intend to do. He doesn't. We say things that maybe we do intend to do, but for one reason or another, we change our mind and we never get around to it. He doesn't. We label things bad when they're actually good. We call things that are good bad when they're actually good. And we call things good when they're actually bad. You can't trust the things we say. Because our words don't make reality, they simply try to describe it. But you can't trust us. The other day, Monica and the kids, I think, were driving back from Orlando, and at least Luke was in the car. I don't know who else was there. And he had to go to the bathroom really bad. He had to pee really bad. You've been there. And I don't know why they didn't feel like they could stop, but there was a McDonald's cup sitting there. And let's face it, that's a bathroom too. I mean, that's good enough, right? So Monica gives Luke the McDonald's cup. And she says, just use this. Just use this. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a normal story. There's no point to that. That's not the issue. So he does his thing, fills it up, and I'm sure he feels happy and relieved and so on. Puts the cap back on it, sets it in the drink dispenser. I mean, that's the best place to put a cup, right? It's the best place to store a cup is in a cup holder. And so even though that cup was labeled McDonald's and had the little dimple that said cola pushed down on the top, it wasn't cola. And Monica, bless her heart, halfway into driving home, reaches down, takes a deep drag, of something other than cola. Now, she was adamant that I tell you, she quickly spit it out. She did not swallow. But just because it says soda doesn't mean it is. You can't trust us, the things we say. But God isn't like that. This is why we're suspicious. This is why we are by nature reticent to trust each other and the things that we say. It's why even when someone tells us what we hoped to hear, we don't know, we're not sure, because in our experience and in reality, human beings can't be trusted with what they say. And when they say something, they change their mind. And sometimes they mean it, but then they don't do what they say anyway. It doesn't even matter whether it's sincere, it's often a lie. And unfortunately, we think of God that way, and it's just one way, one of many ways. He's just not like us at all. When God speaks, it's because He already decides something. It is an act in itself, and it makes it real. If God says it's cola, it becomes cola, simply because He says it. And when God speaks, history obeys. It's forever etched into the story of time. God doesn't get it wrong. God doesn't change His mind or run out of motivation to finish something He starts. He does not tire. He does not lose heart. He does not forget. He does not grow faint like we do. God speaks only what is, because He is the God who is. And when He speaks, He makes it so. And so I want you to reconsider with me the first words of John's Gospel. John 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and He was with God in the beginning. In this cosmic moment, in this explosive moment, He was there. Jesus was there. And through Him, He says, all things were made. All that was created through Jesus Christ. Without Him, nothing was made that has been made. Now consider this. The one who said, let there be light, this one. This is the same one who said to you and to me, come and follow me. The same one who said, rise, pick up your mat and walk. The same one who said, I have called you my friends. The same one who said, you are my disciples. The same one who said, you ought to love one another. The same one who said, I go to prepare a place for you. The same one who said to Pilate and to Roman power and authority, you have no power over me that was not given to you by God. The same one who said, hanging on a Roman cross, Father, forgive them. The same one who said in his last breath, it is finished. The same one who said when he had come back from the grave, I will return again. The same voice you listen to in the quiet of your own prayers is the same voice that called from above the chaos and the void of the universe and said, be born in a burst of photons. The same voice. And the Maker, the light bringer, the cross bearer still speaks, you guys. Our whole lives with God are built on this reality. He is still speaking. He is not silent. Thirdly, God owns. The Maker owns what He makes. This should not be a difficult concept for us to consider. We are Americans. We understand personal property. We're very serious about our personal property. We are vigilant about our personal property. We ought to understand that what God makes is His. If you make a thing, it's yours. We understand that in everything, from invention to art, even intellectual property. If I write something, it's mine. It's my intellectual property. You think something first, you write it down to confirm it, it's yours. Call that creative property rights. Listen, guys, God has creative property rights over you. God has made the world. He made you. Think about that. You're His. Your life belongs to Him. His intention was always that you would be His treasured possession. Think of Exodus 19. Now, if you obey me fully, this is what Moses writes, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, he says, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. I think the sooner that a human being comes to terms with that reality, the better off they'll be. People come to me all the time with decisions. Many of you do. They come to me looking for, an answer or wisdom or something. Effectively, the question, always behind the question is, what should I do in this situation? And they're often complex situations that require, a lot of analysis and thinking. And yet I find that even with you, as devoted as you are, as a community, I find I still have to remind you that it's not your decision. I still have to say, even in this last week, I probably said this to 3 or 4 different people. I just said, we talk about what the decision is and the complexity of the decision. And then finally I say, you do know that at the end of the day, your life belongs to God. I mean, did you do that? Did you make that exchange with God? Did you offer your life to God? And then invariably the person will sort of get uncomfortable and say, yeah. What does that have to do with anything? I said, well, if you really gave your life to God, then this decision isn't your decision. It isn't about you. It isn't what you want or what you think is best. It's about what God wants, and you have to know what He wants because it's His life. If you really gave your life to Him, then it's His life. It's His decision. Why do you think it's your decision? It's not your decision. And if that's true, if that's the case, then what becomes the highest competency that a believer can have in their life, if not to hear the voice of God, to know the voice of God? All we should do is pore over the Scriptures and dig deep into that place of quietude so that we can figure out what God is saying to us. Our whole future depends on it, whether or not we can hear Him guide His own life. My life is not mine anymore. It was given away, and now it's His. And so those decisions, in one sense, that's very liberating, because if a certain decision is made and it's God's to make, and He makes it and it ends up badly, I could just say that was God's thing. That was God who messed that up. And by the way, that's not radical. That's simple Christianity, simple faith. When you give your life to Jesus, you're returning what was not yours to take in the first place. You're returning back to Him what was always His. Years ago, when we lived on 18th Street, we had a relationship with a little girl. She was probably 11 at the time. Sweet, beautiful. And one day, my laptop went missing, disappeared. And you know that panic you get when your laptop is missing, and it's like the book I was writing was on it, and it was a rough moment. And of course, at first you think you misplaced it, you lost it, but then you try everything, you realize, man, this was taken. It was stolen. And once I figured that out, I figured it could only be a few people, and I pieced it together that it was probably her. She probably took it. Almost certainly she had taken it. And I remember rushing as quickly as I could over to where she lived, over to her place. See, if you possess something that isn't yours, the longer you keep it in your possession, the more you think it's yours. The longer you hold it and the longer you use it, the more you begin to think, well, this has always been mine. It's supposed to be mine. So I was rushing over to her because I thought, the longer we go with her keeping it, the worse off it'll be between her and I, between our relationship, the future of our relationship. So I rushed over. I found her. It was like nighttime. It was probably 10 or 11. I asked her grandmother if she could just come down. So she came down. And I said, can I just talk to you privately? And so I pulled her out. No, she's young. And I knew she had done it, but I didn't want to shame her, and I also wanted her to give it back to me. In fact, the whole end game for me was that she give it. But the most important thing to me was not to scold her, not for her to learn some lesson, but for me to get it back. And not because I wanted it back, but because I knew that somehow if she keeps this, if she steals from me, that will become the defining characteristic of our relationship. She will never feel comfortable around me again. She will always feel this little bit of guilt inside her that she'll know and she'll have to live with. And I said, sweetheart, did you take it? Now, before you answer, I want you to know I'm not mad. But I'm going to give you a minute. You've got a couple minutes. I just want you to think about it and don't rush an answer. Just take a second and think deeply. Do you really want to do that? And if you don't, if you want to go get it, you can get it and bring it back to me, give it back to me, and it will be like you never did it. I'll forget that it happened. And if it was just a mistake and something you want to let go of, you can do that right now. You can return it to me. And she sat there, I could see this sort of the dilemma, like, do I admit it? But a lot of the reason why we don't want to admit our crimes, a lot of the reason why we don't want to admit what we've stolen is because we're afraid of punishment, because we're afraid of the return of that. And if you really knew that you could admit to your crimes and not be punished, if you really knew that all you'd find on the other side of that was grace, maybe we would be more open to confession. And so she says, I remember she just looked at me. She took a while, and finally she said, okay. And she went upstairs and got it and brought it back to me. And there was reconciliation. See, if I steal something from you, isn't it right for me to give it back to you? Of course. And when I do give it back to you, isn't there now the possibility of reconciliation, of forgiveness? And the guilt I felt from stealing it in the first place, isn't that taken away from me in this act of surrender? Guys, I want you to listen very closely to me. Your life is not your own. It was made by God, and it was given to you to steward. And I urge you with all my heart to give it back to Him. So you can know the release of the guilt and the shame of having stolen something precious from God that was not yours. And the freedom and the joy of letting Him lead you and speak to you. Maybe this is what Jesus meant when He said, whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Or what Paul meant when he wrote, for you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with Him in glory. We are better when our lives are given back to the Maker, when they are hidden with Him in Jesus. I remember still going back to living on 18th Street. I remember we had this Dodge Caravan, and apparently those are like the easiest cars in the world to steal. They're super easy to steal. All you have to do, now don't go using this, some of you shady characters in here, but you can, you just take a screwdriver and you jam it into the cylinder and you pop that cylinder out, and then there's like a little latch behind it, and you just push the latch with the same screwdriver. Just get a flathead screwdriver, a long one. And then you just pop the cylinder out, and it's really easy, turns out. So it kept getting stolen. And I remember it was very important that we bought a club. You know what a club is? You know those things? So we bought a club, and Monica just never put the club on. I mean, what is the point of having it if you never put it on? So she never put it on. And I remember one night I came home and I was like, hey, where's the van? She's like, what? And it was gone again out of the front of the house. And I was like, okay. So I go looking for it. Not sure what I'm going to do, but I go looking for it. And I find it. I find it in the projects. This is back when College Hill projects were still there. And so I go in there, and this is how I found our van. I found it up on the curb, like sideways, running, headlights going, smoke coming out of the engine, all the doors open, and the back of it completely littered with eating chicken wings, just chicken wing bones. Somebody had a good time in the van, you know. I like that image because I think it's what we do with our lives. We break in, we steal it, we do God knows what with it, running around with our friends, and we end up leaving it, you know, jacked up on the side of the road with the engine smoking and chicken wings in the back. The residue of our you know, life of craziness or whatever. This is how we drive. This is where we end up when we think we're better equipped to run our own lives than the God who made us. It is folly. It is folly to do that. We want to possess our own lives, or worse, we give control of our own lives to another human being or to another institution. Because we have, like the universe itself, drifted further and further away over time from this creation event. We've drifted further and further away from the voice of God. We have, as the human race, forgotten the sound of His voice and the warmth of His touch and the power of His will. We have forgotten that all things know Him and owe Him their very existence, that we all belong to Him. And that's a good thing. One of the first things we learn about Him in these first few lines of Scripture is that the Maker God wants us. He wants to create us. He wants something. He has desire, and so He makes. And so that means that there is the fourth idea that God intends. There is intention behind what He has made. Creation is not careless, it is not accidental, it is not casual. It is formed for something. It is made with intent, with purpose, with destiny. Do you know that about you? That you were made for something? It can feel like the world we live in is random and indifferent, like your own thoughts and actions are often random and indifferent, and we can sort of fall for that trick. But this text reveals that God is covenanting with the world when He makes it. He's promising something to us when He makes us. He's not created us for nothing, for no reason, or just because. God is not careless like that. And when He makes something, He does it with purpose and intent. And the intent of God is like a promise, like a gift that is built into a thing. And you are more than you realize, because you were created for something with His intention inside you. And so He gives. God gives. I think that giving gifts is a skill. I think some people are good at it. I think some people suck at it. But you can get better, so keep trying. Jennifer Bartlett, who lives with me, once gave me for Christmas, just try to go there. It's Christmas morning. We're passing out gifts, whatever. Here's yours. And then you go, thank you. And I opened it, and it was a tie. Now, Jennifer's lived with me for 15 years. Exactly. That's how I felt. That's exactly how I felt. I didn't say it, but that's how I felt. She lived with me for 15 years. I'm like, in all these years, when have you ever seen me wear a tie? Ever? See, I don't care. If it's Christmas, I don't care. I'm just rough like that. I'm like, what is this? So I take it out. It gets worse. It gets worse. The tie was used. And then as I took it out and actually tried to tie it and tie it on, it was a child's tie. And it wasn't a joke. She was like excited, thought I would like it. A good gift stays with you. A good gift is used. A good gift becomes a part of the fabric of your life. The bad gift just gets thrown away or ignored or whatever. We know that's what makes a bad gift. In fact, part of being a good gift giver is understanding the person to whom you're giving the gift, knowing them, what it is they need, knowing what it is they want, understanding them as a person. My sister, for example, this year gave me poop-pourri. Poop-pourri. It's like you squirt it in the toilet. And I think that's awesome. And I was super excited. I don't know, just because I thought it was hilarious. And I thought the year before, my sister gave me a fart machine. Now, what this is, it's like a speaker, and you put it somewhere, and it has a wireless device, like a remote control, and you squeeze the remote control, and wherever you've put the speaker, a fart noise, a realistic, there's actually a couple options. It has a couple of settings. There's a realistic. Now, I love that gift. I take that everywhere. I've taken that overseas with me. I use that in a board meeting. The first board meeting we had after Christmas, I was so excited because I stuck the fart machine under key people's chairs, and I just waited to the key point in the board meeting when I could light it up, when I could shoot it off. That's a good gift. What makes it good is that the person understands you. They know what you'll like. They know what you'll find usable. What stays with you in your life. It becomes a part of your story, that gift. And as I bring this to a close, I want you to really listen, because this may be the most important thing I say today. What does God give us? What is it that, even in this story of origins, that God has just given the human race, has given to you and to me? First of all, He gives us Himself. He wanted us to hear His voice as clearly as you are hearing mine now. He gives us creation to walk freely in, to rule and to steward. All of Genesis 2 is really about all these things that He made just to sort of flow to Eden, just to create this place, this garden for the man and for the woman. He gives us community. He gives us each other. He wants us to have that experience of feeling no shame with another human being, with a community of human beings. Because we find that gift, that place where we have nothing to hide. Can you imagine that? Just for a second? Having nothing to hide. The depth of a world to discover in the eyes and the mind of that woman that He made. Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, and yet a separate mind. I mean, this is incredible to Adam. She's like me. She's not like anything else that's been created. She's like me. She's equal to me. And yet she's other than me, separate from me. What does that mean? If not a world of discovery? What does God give when He gives Eve? It's not about sexuality. It's about community. It's about discovery. It's about another human being having a mind that you can learn and know their thoughts, their feelings. It's the possibility of selflessness. The possibility of love, real love. The possibility of making a sacrifice for another equal. It wouldn't have been right for Adam to make a sacrifice for an animal, because he's higher than the animals. He's meant to rule or govern them, to name them. But now He's given this person, a human being, another one who's equal to me, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. You are bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. You are my equal, and to know you is a gift from God. To understand why you are the way you are, and your oddities, and the way that you think, and the way that you look at the world, this is a gift. And He gives us His command. He gives us a warning. And yes, that's a gift too, a warning, a gift of wisdom in the face of real danger. Don't go there, my son. Don't eat that. Don't walk over there. That's dangerous. That's a gift too. He gives us work. This is also in chapter 2, because before the fall, that hasn't happened yet, and yet there's work to be done, because one of the greatest threats to humanity is boredom. One of the greatest threats to the human heart is boredom, and He gives us infinite work to be done. And not just the work of the land, but listen to me carefully, the work of discipleship. Not just the work of the land, but the work of discipleship. Did you notice that God gives the command not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil just to Adam? He does not give it to Eve. He gives that command to Adam, and then He creates Eve. And He does not give Eve that command. Why? Because God is giving Adam the gift of discipleship. He's saying, I have given you a command, and now I've created this woman, and I want you to explain it to her. And that's a gift too. The gift of disciple making. And by the way, it is Eve who ends up sinning first. And that is because Adam was given someone to teach and to disciple, and he didn't do it. When she actually responds to the serpent, which we'll see next week, she gets it wrong. She quotes it wrong because obviously she had not integrated. Adam had not really taught her that one command. And sin entered the world not because of the serpent, but because of ignorance and because of the lack of love between Adam to Eve. If she was taught, if they were unified, things might have gone very differently that day. Maybe she would have said something like, I don't know, the serpent saying, you ought to do this, and God knows, and then you'll be like God. And maybe she said, these are all good points, serpent. Can you hang on one second? As she gets like her fillet knife and comes back and turns them into some shoes or something. And that leads us to the final strange gift. There is a dragon in paradise. No sin yet, no fall, and yet there is a serpent there, a liar, an enemy. The final great gift He gives is an enemy. He gives us a serpent to tempt us, an enemy to fight, and a dragon to slay. Because guys, paradise, this picture of paradise, is not a place of leisure, as you imagine. It's not a beach somewhere with a cocktail in your hand. That's not paradise. That's not the image of paradise. It's a place of worship, community, and mission. It's a place of war. His intention was that we would face challenges, even in paradise. Was that we would have relationship with each other, that we would have hard work, and that we would have a dragon to fight and kill. He gave us that gift. He gave us a serpent to lie to us so that we could say, you're lying, and I'm going to take you down. Because that's a part of what it means to be a human being. All part of the world that God intended, that He created for us before there was sin. You were made for worship, you were made for community, and you were made for mission. Lead your own life, and you will leave at least one of those out. Let God lead you, and He'll lead you back to Eden, back to paradise, back to Zion, to the kingdom of God. Let me invite up the musicians. This is why, incidentally, we plant microchurches, because we are in pursuit of paradise. You're recreating in this broken world, this fallen world, paradise, because paradise is made of these three elements, these three facets. Paradise, let me redefine it for you, is not a beach somewhere on a lounge chair. Paradise is a place where people hear the voice of God and walk with Him in the cool of the day. Paradise is a place where we know each other and have no shame, where we have nothing to hide from one another. Paradise is a place where we go see the dragon that we have to fight, and we fight him together in the power and the grace of God. That's paradise. And that's what we're doing. That's what you're doing. That's what we're called together to do, each of us, in our own small way. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a movie. It's probably 10 years ago now. I thought of it the other day because Luke was sad because he didn't get to watch something the other kids were watching. So I said, I'll let you watch this movie. The movie is called Equilibrium. And it's a sort of Orwellian, dystopian world that's set up by the filmmaker. And in it has this picture of the future where emotion is illegal. Where they've tried to eliminate war, they've tried to eliminate conflict, they've tried to eliminate all the things related to negative human emotions. And part of the narrative is that, yes, we've also eliminated love and joy and all of that, but at least we've eliminated the bad things. You should just have these kind of automatons. And the way that the government controls them is they have to take this drug every day. They have to take their interval every day. And there's this kind of police force that's created. This is Christian Bale's main character. This is his job, is to sort of police emotion. And one of the interesting features of the movie is that any works of art, any things of beauty, I think Yeats, there's a poetry book by Yeats which is like stolen, and that's part of the theme. The Mona Lisa is there, they burn it. Anytime there's a piece or work of art, it has to be destroyed because it creates sense offenders. It creates people who start to feel again. And if you're feeling again, then you're breaking the law. You're a part of breaking this utopia now without emotion. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Christian Bale's character misses an interval and he begins to feel. And he wakes up on his bed without covers in this sort of cold room that he sleeps in. He wakes up, and in his little window, which is sort of masked by a layer, an opaque layer of tinting, he just sees a little bit of the sun coming through, a little bit of sunlight peeking in. And he's moved by it because he hasn't taken his interval. And so he begins to feel something. He begins to be moved. And so he reaches out to that opaque layer of tinting, and he begins to scratch and claw at it and pull it away. And slowly as he does, he pulls back to just sheer glass that looks out into that city that's supposed to keep away emotion. And there is no art. It's all burned. There is no beauty. And yet there, rising over the city, is a sunrise and a rainbow. And he begins to weep at the sight of it. He breaks down at the sight of the beauty of the sun coming up on the horizon of that city. And I'm reminded of, I think it was Max Lucado who said that nature is God's first missionary. And when there are no Bibles and when there is no one to preach, there is a sunrise. And there is the springtime. And as a testament to beauty itself, God, every day, every morning, makes that sun rise and makes our hearts leap with anticipation of a world where there is feeling, of paradise itself. It's a beckoning, a calling to us to something else, something greater. And I urge you, listen to me carefully. I don't know if you believe in Jesus or don't. I don't know why you're here, how you came. But today, give your life to that one that made that sunset and that sunrise. He knows you. And He's calling you, speaking to you. On the night He was betrayed, Jesus took bread, and after He gave thanks for it, He broke it. He said, "This is my body, which is broken for you. Take it and eat it to remember me." In the same way, after supper, He took the cup and He said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is shed for the forgiveness of sin. Drink it also to remember me." Just bow your heads for a minute as we come to the table this morning. This is a big day, for us. It's a start of something. It is itself a genesis for us. And I feel like the heavy kind of word that is in my heart for you is, will you give back your life to God? Will you return what does not belong to you and become again His treasured possession? And I know what it's like for me. I said yes to that, but then every day I take a little back. I steal a little back, control. And I'm asking you, the one who gave up his own life for you, will you give yours to him? He's earned it. He deserves it. And the one who called creation out of the nothing calls you this morning, whispers your name. It's the same one that hung on that cross 2,000 years ago and gave his own life, shed his own blood for you. And that's what we remember in this moment, that he did that for you. He loved you. And even in that, the creation of all things, God knew and held in his mind that we would fall, that we would step out of Eden, that we would break covenant with him, and he would find a way back to us. That he would take our own punishment upon himself so that we could be reconciled, so that we could give our lives back to God. And we could experience that purpose again. So just take a minute, breathe that in deeply, say your own prayer, make your own covenant. And then when you're ready, guys, come forward. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 stations here. You can come forward. The body and blood of Jesus given for you.